Welcome to The Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world. Small.
In this week's episode of The Kindness Project, we share the best of The Kindness Project over the years, part 4.
Hi.
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 Hi, Charlotte. How are you?
Not bad, you?
I'm doing all right. Would we like to start The Kindness Project?
Oh, that'd be nice.
Oh, you know what? I'm so tempted to just do like the most boring kindness project ever, where we just talk like that
Hi.
and talk about trains and
Counting trains.
but we're not going to do that because I am joined by the girl who is so maternal. Her nickname at school is Mother. It's Charlotte. Are you a bit embarrassed about that, Charlotte?
Yes.
Are you a bit embarrassed about that? You do realise this goes out in public as well, yeah? You do realise that actually gets published. And we've got a bunch of listeners now. So yeah, people are going to hear this.
Don't call me mum.
Don't call me Mother, Charlotte Dames.
I'm joined.
Does anybody actually call you? We'll get onto your intro in a minute. But does anybody actually call you Mother, or is it like you are just quite maternal?
Some of them call me mum.
Mum, right? Any mother?
No mum.
Any mummy dearest?
No.
Any mother?
No, I've had a couple of mamas.
Mama. I've never heard a 14-year-old girl with the nickname of Mama. Okay.
No, there's a girl in the year above, and we all call her Mother Laura.
All right. So you do. Why?
I'm not the only one.
All right. So there's a few mothers in the school, is
There's
there?
a few maternal figures.
Mother Laura and your mother Charlotte.
I'm just mum. I'm just mum.
Okay. Sorry, your intro was.
The man. I'm joined by the man.
I'm joined by the man.
Oh, we're all fighting with the man. I'm joined by the man whose ears are so wonky, you might as well chop them off like Van Gogh.
Oh, God. My one ear is wonky. This ear, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see what ear I'm pointing to. This ear is a particularly wonky ear. And they're both massive as well. I mean, I've got a decent set of Legos, genuinely.
Goals.
They are so big, there is no excuse for one of them not working particularly well, really. I mean, there should be enough space in those Legos for everything to work. But Legos, you like that?
I like that.
Bit of sort of, I don't know what Legos is. Is it rhyming slang? Is it sort of
Lego.
It's just quite cool. Legos. So let's tell as we normally do, let's tell our listeners who are listening with their Legos, obviously, how they can get in touch. Is that cough ever going to go away?
No!
I don't think it is.
Hola.
Are you listening, listeners? Are you listening with your Legos? Let's check. If we don't get any emails, we know you're not listening with your Legos.
So send us some emails, guys.
Yeah.
Twitter.
Are you?
I'm gonna start with Twitter. At Hola Kindness.
Are you listening? With your Legos? Sorry, what was the Twitter?
At Hola Kindness.
Okay.
The email.
Email.
Hola. At.
No H.
The Kindness.
Absolutely, just, yeah. 6 months we've been doing this. Yeah.
And 6 months you've tried to correct me. In 6 months.
The website, www.thekindnessproject.co.uk. On the website, just so you know, you can see all the show notes, you can see...
You can listen to them all.
You can listen to them all. You can see some photos of us. You can do loads of different stuff.
Because this face is fabulous. And I'm not pointing to myself.
Not the Legos, though. The Legos were a bit wonky.
Just cover up the ears.
Just is that now? This is really good for the video, but not good. It was our silent. It was the silent assassin Russell who said, "Yeah, you know what would be really good if we do a video with a podcast." Ain't working, Russ, is it? Really? Let's be honest.
We're just visualising. We're actually talking about the work we had to.
Exactly. Well, I mean, to be fair though, we did do a viral video question where we just watched the videos and narrated, so it doesn't get any worse than that, to be honest. So, would you like to know today's, or do you want to do a jingle?
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Yeah, we get in trouble if we don't mention Facebook. Our editor, producer, and the man so silent. Mimes are scared of him. Russell Dames. I didn't even write that one down. That was just made up. That was all right, wasn't it, for a made up one? Says you never mention the Facebook often enough, so I'm going to do it right now. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com
Ooh, interesting.
/Holokindness. So we are all about the Holokindness, and you can get in touch with us. So, would you like this week's question of the podcast? This week's question of the podcast is... I can't remember. Oh, no. I've remembered. What is the best piece of advice you've ever had? Hello, and
advice from you.
And we are joined by a girl who thinks she's a budding YouTube superstar. It's Sophie Dames. How you doing, Soph? You doing well? You a bit cold, Soph? You wearing a blanket?
Batman cape.
So, what's the best piece of advice you think you've ever had?
Probably be from you. Work hard.
Work hard is a good piece of advice. Apart from be a ghost, Soph, what's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Watch the phone.
Watch the phone is the best piece of advice you've ever had. I don't think that's a particularly good piece of advice.
Who gave you that advice? That's a bit wonky.
Yeah, that is a bit wonky.
Just me, just myself.
Okay, fair enough. So, we want to hear from you.
No.
Oh, no, go on.
Mummy says, can you help me with the dinner?
Mummy says, can you help with the dinner? And you like to help, don't you? You are quite a helpful girl, aren't you? What's the most helpful thing you've done this week?
Save it for the next question of the podcast.
No, we've got another question on the podcast next week. This is called Dead Air, listeners. This isn't normally good podcast etiquette, but...
help Mummy.
You help Mummy with what?
Cooking the dinner.
Ah, right. So you...
Chef.
So you help... So you help Mummy be a chef. That is awesome. So, why are you doing Batman?
Because she had the blanket like a cape.
Okay.
And it reminded me of Batman and it got stuck in my head.
Fair enough. So that is this week's question of the podcast. What's the best advice you've ever received? Shall we get on, my friend, with Kindness News?
Kindness News. Welcome to the Kindness Project.
You took your time. When was you going to start that?
I thought you were starting.
Oh, did you? And that's why you decided just to go, welcome to the Kindness Project. Russell, nobody will notice, Charlotte. Russell will just edit that bit out.
Oh, what, your poor imitation, yeah.
What do you mean by poor imitation? What, me going like that? Welcome. How you doing?
Not bad.
This is our first proper full fat episode of 2019. So if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How's 2019 going for you so far?
Nothing has happened.
You've been laying in bed and cleaning. I thought laying in bed and cleaning, I thought cleaning was best performed when you're not laying in bed. I thought you actually had to be up. How'd you do this laying in bed and cleaning thing?
I sat on my bed and I put all my clothes in bed with no organised them into piles.
Well, you know what? I blame Netflix because Marie Kondo's documentary show, whatever you want to call it, if you don't know, listeners, Marie Kondo wrote a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up or something like that. And now she's got a show where she helps people basically get rid of the fluff in their lives, just get rid of all the stuff they don't need. And I think Cassie and you have taken it a bit to heart, haven't you? You've got, right, I am condoing this and I'm condoing that. Condo has turned into a verb in our house. What are you doing? I'm just giving it a bit of condo. I'm just condoing it. I'm just giving it a bit of condo. But I've just realised we are a couple of minutes in and we still haven't done our introductions, which are traditional for the Kindness Project. So I'm joined by a girl who in 2019 will be 16, which is a bit scary for me. It's Charlotte Dames.
I'm joined by Chris Dames. His multitasking is incredible, especially when food's involved.
What does that mean?
The other day, when I was writing these intros, I was thinking, what can I write for an intro? And I looked up, and I saw you just sitting there with food and just started typing.
Well, typing and eating at the same time. Look, I like to be productive. I haven't tried. One thing I haven't tried is laying down and tidying up. I mean, clearly your multitasking is better than mine. And I haven't tried anything in the gym. So what I'd like to do is try and eat chocolate biscuits while I was in the gym, just so as I was losing in the calories, I was replacing them. Do you reckon that'd work? What things would you multitask on?
I don't know.
Are you a big multitasker?
No.
Oh, okay.
One thing at a time, otherwise you get scrambled. I do this, I'm very bad with this, but like my head goes like here, there and everywhere.
Right.
It's like I'll be doing something and all of a sudden I'll see something else and I go, that's got to be done.
Yeah.
It's got to be done.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
But they do say, and I agree with this actually, that multitasking is a bit of a fallacy, because if you try and focus on more than one thing at once, where's your attention going? I think nowhere. It's been lost in the mist of time. So you can either lay down or tidy up. That's up to you, but don't try and do both. So, as it's 2019, should we remind our listeners about how they can get in touch with us?
Oh, yes.
Oh yes, I'm glad to hear the Churchill dog impression has made a comeback for 2019. Oh yes, oh yes.
How are they going to get in touch with us? At Ola Kindness on Twitter.
Right.
Do you go into Facebook and you do the search?
Just search for either the Kindness Project, or you can go www.facebook.com/holler kindness.
It's so much more complicated though. You just
Up to you.
search it.
Search for Kindness Project or Holler Kindness, and you should be able to find us. Did you do Twitter or did you do email?
Twitter.
Okay, email.
Honor@thekindnessproject.co.uk.
2019 hasn't changed the fact that you still don't pronounce the H. Just hola kindness. We've been doing this for a year, and every time it's holla kindness. It's no fun. Just there's all these. There's a strange lady called Ola somewhere who works for a kindness charity who's getting all these emails going, why are they asking about Muppets? And do you know what I mean?
Biscuits.
They're biscuits. That's where all our emails are going. And as it's 2019, the question of the podcast is back.
Dun, dun, dun.
So,
Don't choke yourself out.
I know. I'm so excited about the question of the podcast being back, I almost choked. But this week's question of the podcast is, what's the biggest goal, hope, dream or aspiration you're setting yourself in 2019? What do you think your one is? Because we had this conversation, you don't know what you're going to do in 2019 yet?
Power through.
Power through. You did.
To make sure I've got all my brain cells by the end of the year.
Well, as it's coming up to GCSE year, I think that's quite a mighty aspiration to have.
Next year.
It's next year. It's good stuff. And we've got Japan this year, which I'm really excited about. So we've got loads of really good stuff. But listeners, we'd like to hear from you. What is the biggest goal, hope, dream and aspiration you're setting yourself for 2019? We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, kindness news.
And I'd like to go Kindness News Animal Edition.
Oh.
Okay? And I'd like to first talk about cats, because there is some more evidence that ancient DNA shows cats domesticate themselves.
Lazy buggers.
I mean, cats, right, have got an easy life, haven't they? I mean, literally,
They come and go, they get fed, they get pets.
Literally, they unlike dogs who are loyal creatures, cats are a bit like, what are you going to feed me then? What are you up to, mate? Sort your life out. So let me talk about domestication of animals. Domestication of animals was an amazing feat that changed human relationships with the natural world. But while a Pomeranian looks nothing like a wolf, a thoroughbred jump horse looks nothing like a wild pony, and a pot-bellied pig looks nothing like a black boar, domestic house cats look pretty much the same as wild cats.
Except they're teeny tiny.
Is that they're smaller. That's because they domesticated themselves, not through form, but through function. And research reveals that wildcat ancestors share essentially the same DNA as house cats today. So that's interesting. I don't know why that's on the Good News Network, though, Charlotte, to be honest. But let's pick an inspiring story for our next one. Photo of paralysed man cleaning plastic from India River goes viral, and he's showered with gifts to better his life. A passion for photography has always possessed this young engineer from Kerala, India. Now he knows there was a purpose. After a photo he took while walking around his village, ended up changing a man's life and getting a shout out from India's Prime Minister. Carrying around a rented camera searching for stories, Nandu K found nothing very interesting until one day he came across a bridge. I was always keen to capture images which had a story to tell, images which had life. I noticed a man rowing a boat and collecting something from the river, Nandu told the Good News Network. The old man was N.S. Rajapan, and he's been plucking plastic bottles from the river for years to earn a meagre living. Paralysed since the age of 5 when he was struck with polio, his daily routine had been keeping the waterways of Vibhamanad Lake clear of plastic, all from the seat of a small boat. Without grudges, the 69-year-old would drag his legs a short way down the riverbank to the Meenachil River, after which he was free to wander the water in search of bottles. Filling his boat with plastic only earns him about 17 cents, but it's enough for a meal, and it's satisfying to know he's helping the environment. Somebody should remove the waste from the water, he said, and I am doing what's possible for me. You know what's interesting about that? The fact that this guy who's disabled knows that he can make a positive impact in the world and takes action to do that. So this photographer uploaded the story to the Pro Media Facebook page, and people began retweeting it saying, let's make this guy famous. The UN Environment, the director of the UN's Environment Programme, Eric Soheim, also did it. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi got involved and then was praising Rajapan's efforts, and then it went viral. And the elder worker got loads of gifts. So he got a new motorboat, courtesy of a local businessman. The plans were in place to build a house, and there's loads of people helping him out, including a Bangalore-based company making him a wheelchair. So that good deed that he did completely unrewarded and completely unrecognised, and was quite happy to do it, has now been shown to have a benefit to the world, and he's been rewarded accordingly.
Nice.
Lovely story. Should we move on with the show?
Yeah.
Let's move on with the show, and the next part of the show is
Kindness news. I think of the structure of
kindness news. So Charlotte's going to do the first bit. It's Josh's story, why kindness matters in later life.
Josh Shelton is a group facilitator for standing together.
Simran.
Yeah, Wales.
Standing Together Wales, a project which aims to improve mental health, well-being, and build community connections through peer support groups.
Here he shares some insight into the role that kindness has played in these groups since lockdown.
For the last 18 months, Standing Together Wales has been a project that encourages people in later life to get together and engage in deeper conversations. They aim to reduce loneliness and isolation in later life by facilitating neighbours to become friends. Now, that is a great project, isn't it? You're just making those connections with people who might live together might live next to each other for years and years and years, just don't make that connection.
I like to think we're relatively good friends with our neighbours.
We've got really decent neighbours, actually. Yeah.
It felt like we were playing a fruitful game of Scrabble, and the COVID-19 outbreak just flipped the board, ruining a great game we were on track to win. It is now illegal to congregate. Isolation is mandated, and neighbours who became friends are cut off once more.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? You know, I suppose if they've got a project that's designed to bring people together and suddenly they can't do it, what do you do?
You can clearly tell this man plays Scrabble with these big words like congregate and mandated.
I know.
And neighbours.
But we was playing Scrabble and then somebody flipped the ball. But what they had to do is find a new normal for the project.
We missed the project we had, but we have to find a new normal. We developed a telephone service, crucially putting social interaction between people at its heart. We started by making contact with our participants. With permission, we were able to pass on the message from one neighbour to another, sometimes providing people with the only contact they'd had from their friends in weeks. We have since moved on to making conference calls. Using just a mobile phone, we're able to merge calls between our participants' landlines, connecting friends who haven't spoken for over a month.
And the other thing they've done is use, during the coronavirus, being a bit more creative. There's a great capacity, the organiser, Josh says, to be creative and kind in peer support groups. A partially sighted group member loves quizzes, but can't take part in the paper quiz the resident scheme are running currently. We were able to conference call her and 3 friends to do a telephone quiz. She went on to win. Such sessions are heartwarming and fulfilling, but the real power of our project comes in the kindness shown by the participants to each other between sessions. That I love. It's an amazing project. It builds those so important community connections, and particularly in a society where elderly loneliness is such a huge issue. I think having people out there that are building those connections is fundamentally important. So important. Let's talk about another good news story. Thousands offer to host tiny homes with homeless residents in their own Seattle backyards. A pair of non-profits are housing homeless people in tiny sustainable homes in the backyards of charitable volunteers who decide to host them. The Seattle Bloom Partnership hopes to replicate the cultural shift brought about by Airbnb to tackle the homelessness epidemic in the Pacific Northwest, as well as introduce concepts of sustainable housing to thousands of charitable residents who have offered their homes.
After recommending a homeless resident outside of his architecture studio, Rex Holden transitioned his career towards helping others by starting the Block Project. Its name playing on the words for neighbourhood and for the shape of the tiny houses he would pioneer. Oh, because they look like Lego blocks.
They do. Seattle has the dual problems of expensive real estate and the 3rd largest homeless community in the country, which led Holden to reason that tiny neighbours would have a much better impact than waiting for a big budgeted government program. This is an example of that grassroots support that people can give. He founded Block along with Facing Homelessness. The latter would find backyards in which the former could build small, low-emission housing, and the government stepped in to make the process as legally expedient as possible. Zoning laws already allow for accessory dwelling units to be present on existing properties, and to ensure there's no impact on property tax for those volunteers, their backyards, the non-profits sign 5-year leases for their tiny houses. So what they're doing is building these small houses in their back garden and putting people without homes into these houses using land that, is volunteered.
But also, because they're built on the back of people's houses, aren't they getting like a built-in support system as well?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose there's an element of connection there, isn't there? Instead of being on the street, they potentially become part of these people's homes and families and lives. I absolutely love it. Hi, Janine. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Really a real pleasure to have you on, and also just a massive thanks for you getting up ridiculously early this morning and joining us. What's the time where you are?
Oh, hi, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
You're welcome.
It's just after 7 a.m. in the morning down here in Australia.
Okay.
just outside of Melbourne.
Okay.
I usually like to sleep in a little more, but that's okay.
And you were telling me before we started doing the podcast that you've had a bit of rain.
We've had incredible amount of rain,
Okay.
which is just so odd.
Yeah.
Because this time of the year it's usually very dry. But yeah, great. It's been raining, which is fantastic.
You want it, don't you? Yeah.
Oh, it does. Our continent is very dry, very dry indeed.
It's funny.
So,
We're currently going through. We've had a bit of a storm here over the last couple of days. So storms hit London, which is fine. Which like sort of we have sort of not as extreme weather as some countries, but often as slightly extreme. But I'm training for the London Marathon at the minute. I'm doing the London Marathon in April, and not great running weather. So I went out yesterday for a run, and on the way out it was great because I was giving a bit of a boost. I had a tailwind. Running back when there was a headwind wasn't the easiest job in the world, but it's all good fun. So our listeners can understand a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about you, life experience, and what you've done throughout your life and career?
Okay, well, let's see. I started out as a teacher, a primary school teacher in Queensland, which is a little bit a state north of where I am now.
Okay.
And as I said before the podcast started, I had travelled quite extensively, so that was great. And then in my sort of mid-20s, I was teaching in a very small country town, so I decided to move down to Melbourne to actually study photography.
Okay.
Somehow found myself in publishing. They wanted a teacher in educational publishing, so I got a job in publishing, and from there I became a publisher.
Okay.
Of maths books, actually, for primary school, which was all great. So then I met my partner. We decided to teach English in Japan, so we went there for 3.5 years.
Yep.
Our first daughter, Jess, was born there, and when we came back, I decided that I wanted to live in the country, and I didn't want to be working all the time. So we established our own sort of little publishing business so I could work from home. And so, it's all sort of gone from there.
And when was that?
Teaching. Oh, that's so long ago now. Let me think. That would have been about 1996.
Okay.
I think. So some time ago. So, been publishing books. I actually do write children's readers under another name, J. Dale, and they're published in the UK by Raintree.
Okay.
It's called Engaged Literacy. So I've sort of been in the publishing industry and been in education for a long time. And I was also on my children's school council, and I decided that we needed to do more in the area of keeping children safe from sexual abuse. Not that I have been abused myself, but my neighbour had been abused as a young woman.
Okay.
And so I brought this up at school council saying, could we do more in the prevention space? And I called it body safety, and they ignored me.
Right. Do you think part of that's because it's one of those things that is
uncomfortable.
Is uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's that uncomfortable conversation, but it doesn't need to be. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And as an educator, I could see that.
Yeah.
That, we could do age-appropriate, empowering education for children. And so when I came home from that school council meeting, I said to my partner, Mark, nobody's listening to me. I'm going to write a book, and then they might listen to me. And so then that sort of week, I wrote Some Secret Should Never Be Kept, which was our first book in our own kind of
suite of books,
publishing sphere.
Yeah.
Because, and why we did publish it ourselves, Chris, was because no other publisher wanted to publish it.
Yeah.
And we had to go to 3 illustrators before we could find an illustrator to illustrate it. And it's written like a fairy tale. It's not graphic. It's just a little story that sends a very clear message.
Yeah.
So we decided to do it ourselves, and that's how our publishing company started. Our small publishing company, there's only two of us.
Yeah.
Educate to Empower Publishing.
So that was born out of necessity more than anything else,
Yes,
wasn't it, Jenny?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was happy in education publishing, writing my readers and inventing other sorts of things, but I felt very strongly about this, that we weren't doing enough in this space. And since that book, so many survivors have said to me, if only they had known from that very first inappropriate touch it was wrong,
Yeah.
their lives would be completely different. So
How do we-
the power of prevention.
How do we change the dialogue in that then? How do we make people embrace the awkward conversation to make sure our kids are safe?
Well, I think access to age-appropriate education, telling them that, putting their fears away, because it's actually the adult's fear.
Yeah.
We talk about your body is your body, and no one can come inside your body boundary. And if anyone, we talk about private parts and name them properly. And if anyone touches you, this is what you do. It's very simple stuff, but it's really the parents and the educators who are frightened of this topic.
Stigma, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, we know from statistics that it can be as much as 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 8 boys
Really? Is it that
will be
much?
sexually abused before 18. Some say it's more, and 98% of them know their abuser. So, prevention is the easy part. It's the empowering part.
Well, I think
we
the
need
other
to change that conversation.
I think the other challenge you've got is you just don't know the scope of the issue because it's not talked about. So it's interesting you talk about the age appropriate communication, because I've I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, but there's a documentary on Mr. Rogers, the American the American, and I didn't know who Mr. Rogers is before I saw this documentary. So and it's amazing because he had a very simple style, but seemed to manage to communicate. I mean, one of the subjects he covered off was the death to young kids. Kids of 4 or 5 years of age, and seemed to do it in a way that was that highlighted how to cope with the issue without making it too age inappropriate. And I think there's a fine.
Absolutely.
How do you write like that? How do you communicate like that? Because I'm not convinced it's something I could do.
Firstly, I'd like to say, sorry, Chris, but the first thing is that if it's no good putting it in the too hard basket, because you actually you do your children no favours.
Yeah.
And in the case of body safety education, you actually put them at risk.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there who are your new best friend. They're always there to help out. And if your child doesn't know that kind of touch is wrong, then unsafe touch, then you actually, by putting things in the too hard basket, you're putting them at risk.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
what we need to do is, and I guess this is where my skill is, that I can write in a way that is a child's voice that they can relate to. So, we've all been children, and I'm just lucky I can tap into that.
Your inner child.
Inner child. Yeah, and write in a way that they understand. So recently, the book that probably is one that I am very proud of is called My Body, What I Say Goes.
Okay.
Now, that's written in a very easy style, easy to understand, and the children just get it. And the other thing about that book is we gifted that one to World Vision India.
Okay.
And they've translated it into 10 Indian languages, and they intend to print 1.5 million copies to give away to families
Amazing.
and homes. And they've actually in service 900 teachers to implement that book. And that book, My Body What I Say Goes, has it's non-fiction, so it's kind of skill-based. Everything a kid needs to know, like a toolkit and for parents and educators to help them stay safe.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Love
great.
it, love it. And again, it's access to knowledge that's probably not particularly widely available in some cultures, right? You know, it's just like these conversations don't happen.
They do not happen.
Yeah.
They do not happen. So, you know, being able to by people now, we have a giving back page. So by people now, you know, buying our books or whatever, the books I write, then we are able to give back to communities that would never be able to afford these books yet, so desperately need them.
Love it.
So, you know, it's all a win-win, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. And tell me a little bit more about the publishing company. So it's you and your husband. But
Yes,
can I?
my husband and I, and a young woman called Shanika who works a day a week with us, helping me with social media, because, you know, that's how people get to know us.
It is, right?
Yeah, so and he does, I do all the writing and the teaching notes and all the free resources. We have a lot of free resources and posters, so even if people can't afford the books, there's lots of free stuff there. And my partner Mark does all the technical side and the, you know, getting the books printed and inventory and all that kind of stuff that I really hate.
And do you specialise in educating kids about subjects that just aren't covered conventionally?
I specialise in areas that I feel I've got something to say.
Okay.
I feel that we're ignoring that space. So it started with body safety, and I feel that everyone was uncomfortable with that. So I'm like, well, I'm not, so I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
So that's that area. And then, you know, it sort of morphs from there. So you talk about body safety. Okay, now you need to talk about consent. And what's that mean? You know, body boundaries and respect. Okay, so now you need to talk about gender equality, because, you know, we know that domestic and family violence, gender inequality is the basis of that, and we know that 98% of the abusers are males. So we need to teach our young boys from a young age about consent and respect and seeing all genders as equal and humans as just humans. So then that morphed into, okay, what's that looks like. Okay, we need some empathy, we need kindness, we need all of those things. So for me, it's all part of one whole, and that's the space I want to write in, because that's where I see the need.
And it's interesting, because I think my perspective, and we talked before we'd start recording the podcast on kids, but my perspective certainly changed when Charlotte and then Sophie was born, and you look at their lives and go, I want you to be independent women who want to do whatever you want with your life, and you need to make sure that you've got the confidence to do that. And I think sometimes society isn't equal enough, isn't fair enough to women or girls.
Well, I mean, there was a survey done at a university, and they asked boys and men and women, what do you do to keep yourself safe? Now, the women wrote, I look in the car when I get in, I make sure I'm carrying my keys so they're poking out in case I need them. I always have my phone. I never go running after dark. I always go with a friend when I'm out walking in the park. And the men, they didn't think about it. There was nothing.
Yeah.
So there's the inequality. Women are always looking out, how am I safe? And I've said this to my partner, and I know this is a little bit hard for some people to digest, but when a man sees a woman coming along the road, he'll probably go, oh, okay, who's that? And is she attractive, I guess, whatever. A woman sees a man coming along the road, and I have 3 daughters, they go, okay, am I safe?
Right, yeah.
Is this person going to whistle at me? Are they going to look at me? Are they going, do I have to avert my eyes? They're looking out for their safety. And is this a world we want to bring up our daughters and our sons, because our sons are missing out.
Sure.
With gender inequality, you know, they got to man up. They can't. We want them to be nurturing, beautiful fathers.
Yeah.
You know, we want them to show their feelings, like you know, kindness and empathy.
Yeah. And not be afraid to do that, right? Not be afraid to turn around and go, you know, you're still a man if you are empathetic and kind. And there's, you know, what's interesting? We interviewed a guy called Nick Elston on the podcast. It came out a few weeks ago, and he talks about admitting weakness. He talks a lot. He speaks at events about anxiety and vulnerability. And part of the reason that he got to a point where he finds himself, his career is now talking about anxiety, is he got to a point in his life and his career where everybody was telling him to man up, and he just couldn't take it anymore. He needed to talk to somebody about it. And I just wonder how many men go through that process of assuming that you can't pretend you're struggling. I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it does them no favours. So that's why gender equality is so important as well, because if we teach from a young age, it's okay for our little boys to say, I feel really sad. Yeah. And this is, you know, because of this. And we say, you go to the doll corner, you cook up a lovely meal. I mean, this is what we need our boys to do. It's okay for it to say, oh, you know, girls are empowered, and they are, and that's great. But we don't always want to be just a version of men. Yeah. We want to be women, and we want our men, and we want men to be men, and whatever. We want to redefine that word man, which often has toxic connotations. Yeah. We want it to be, you know, human, and this be a lot more empathy and kindness for both genders and all genders if everybody was thinking of us in terms of equal. So how we do that, I think we need to start from a very young age. We need to change the conversation. I just know when I was teaching young children, like very young, like preppies, which is sort of 4 and 5, the dress-up box, the boys and the girls loved it just as much as each other. You know, some of those boys would get into the princess dress and put on the jewellery and have so much fun and enjoy it. Now, that doesn't mean they're transgender. That just means they enjoy feeling nice, you know, the silks and swishy of a skirt, just like a young girl would.
It's play, isn't it?
That's okay.
It's play. Yeah, no, absolutely right. Now,
it's okay.
Now, one of your books is Be the Difference.
Yes,
and in it you talk about some of the ideas kids can use to just engender positive change, to create positive change. Can you just share a few of those ideas with us?
Well, look, that book came from, I was walking on the beach with my a couple of years ago. I was listening to a song. I don't know if you know Missy Higgins, but she's a singer here in Australia, and she was singing her song called The Difference. You know, we can all make a difference in small ways. And I started chatting to this lady, and we started talking about her partner, and just on the beach, and I was talking a little bit about gender and stuff with her, and she's like, oh, I've never thought that before, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to say that to my husband, and no, and I thought, you know, just that little conversation made a difference. Yeah. It was only a small thing, but it did make a difference. So then I thought, okay, how can kids are very anxious right now. They're worried about climate change. They're worried about so many different things, and they want to do something. So how can we help kids just in small ways make a difference? So I decided that the 3 areas of the book, so there's 40 plus ideas in there to use for families or schools, and they cover 3 sections. So empathy and kindness is first. The second is talking about gender and racial equality, and the third is how we can care for and love for the environment. Okay. So there's 40 plus ideas. There's some also highlighting other kids who are doing great things. So I'm really proud of that book, and Good. I think it might make a difference if we have our kids reading that.
And what ideas specifically did you have for kids to use around empathy and kindness?
Okay, so let's see, basically collecting old clothes that they might have and giving them to a homeless shelter,
Okay.
Raising money for something that they
Care
feel
about.
strongly about,
Yeah.
like the bushfire animals. Kids can get together and have a fundraiser for that.
Yeah.
Having an empathy classroom where they all work out their rules that they're going to use in their classroom and live by those rules.
Okay.
Different things like that.
Amazing. Amazing. and you're I mean, what you're talking about here, Janine, is some like it's things that aren't typically taught in school, right? So particularly as kids get older, so they may learn English or maths or science or art and design, but how important do you think it is for softer skills, for these human skills to be taught?
It's everything, isn't it? It's everything.
I agree.
It's why we find ourselves in wars. It's why we find ourselves in, all sorts of different conflicts, even down at the pub.
Yeah.
It's so important how to have social and emotional intelligence.
Firstly, I mean, I don't get in conflicts down the pub, but you speak for yourself. But secondly, do you think the reason? Part of the reason we don't teach it is because it isn't easily measured. How do you define success? And on that,
Tis the end of another podcast. But the end is ever truly the end, because the end is always the beginning of something entirely new. And our entirely new this week is last week's question of the podcast, as it is every week. And last week's question of the podcast, answered by yours truly and you guys, is what's your favourite canned drink?
now Charlotte and I have said we both love Lil because of its totally tropical taste, but we had a bunch of different answers, all of them valid, apart from Iron Brew. David Forsdyke said, "What? Iron Brew is not a valid answer, is it?" Bas, remind us, what's your favourite soft drink?
Pepsi Max.
Pepsi Max is a
Saying
Pepsi
Iron
Max
Brew's
fan.
not a valid answer.
It's not a valid answer. David Forsdyke said Ting. I've never had a Ting. Keely Benning said Cherry 7-Up. David Bowley said Cherry Coke. Eve Keith said Rio. Ricky Addy said San Miguel. Tam Kane said she loves Lil, but have you tried a Rubicon?
No.
I always see Rubicon
The canned
for
ones
sale.
it's nice. The bottled ones are nice, but the canned ones
But would you have a Lil or a Rubicon?
a little.
Okay, fair enough. I won't try Rubicon then. Serena said Diet Coke. Alison said cream soda. Now, I love cream soda. Absolutely adore cream soda. Carol Staunton said a Rio. John Cook said a Breeder. I think that's a beer. Sharon Hirsch said, can it be alcoholic? I'm going with Copperberg. Kusel is up for a Fever Tree tonic. Gemma Playford said a Cherry Coke. Brian said a can of whoop-ass. I don't know.
Can of water.
I don't know if that... Yeah, you like that canned water soap, don't you? With the little weird top. Sandra Connington said, I don't have canned drinks, but I agree that Fever Tree is nice, but only with a gin. Caroline Thompson said orange Fanta. Emma Stevens said Diet Coke Lime. Stacey Keane said cherry Coke or Dr Pepper. Justin Gaffney said old Jamaican ginger beer. Again, not one I've had. Carol Hussey said no fizzy drinks for me, but I'll have a G&T and a tonic. Pedro Floyd said Kariba. Kariba. Nicola Taylor said Diet Coke. Karen said fizzy Ribena. Steve Chilton said San Pellegrino Blood Orange. Now, I was at the gym this morning.
Oh,
My
I love
treat.
the San Pellegrino Blood
Now, I like San Pellegrino Classic. My Sunday morning treat coming out the gym, San Pellegrino. I love it. Mandy Medlock said Pepsi Max. Karina Murray said a Milo. I don't know. I've never had one of them. Ian Brazier said, I'm surprised no one said Iron Brew yet.
Iron Brew!
Benjamin Fox said cream soda and Tab Clear. Josh Cartwright said root beer. I love it. I used to love a root beer and cream soda. Lorraine Hornsby said San Pellegrino, and Johnny Hall said a Bing. That, my friends, is what everybody's favourite soft drink is, and that is the end of another podcast. Say bye. Bye. Say bye.
Bye.
Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time on the Kindness Project. Bye.
Kindness. Nope, wrong one. Have to go through my roll.
Not kindness news. Tis the end.
Yeah. I gotta go through my roll. Tis the end of another podcast, but the end is never truly the end. The end is always the beginning of something entirely new.
Okay, and last week's podcast question was, if you were a circus act, what would you be? Mike Christie said juggler. The amount of stuff I've had in the past 4 years, managed to keep it all going and look quite calm while doing it. Steve Dan would be the bearded woman. With my man boobs, I'd almost be there. Claire Foster Clearo, at the moment, I feel like Dumbo. Craig Kavanagh said the fed up lion. Gillian Bird said the clown. Justin Gaffney said the ringmaster. Mark Bartley said the strong man. Brian Hill said the current circus is the Houses of Parliament. Again, getting a bit political for us at the Kindness Project. And that is it, my friends. That is the end of another show. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time on the Kindness Project.
Bye.
Bye.